it's good to be here today, and it's good to have you here today. We've been talking about the Neighborhood Christian Center, but more importantly, we've been talking about how we arrived at the Neighborhood Christian Center and how we are where we are now and what we're doing today. So the last 4 weeks, we've been talking about how we did what we did and what happened. We're going to reflect today on how we moved to different areas in the city, but I have to take you back for a little reflection to say how we got to where we have multiple places and we are now in many zip codes, because we didn't just happen one day say we're going to go into all these zip code areas in Memphis. It was a process of time. It was a 30-year process of time moving into those locations. But I'm going to take you back to Loosedale, because I always want to take you back to Loosedale so you can kind of get a picture. If we go back to Basin, my rearing home, not my birth home, in the Basin community, it was just woods and houses and farms. If you go to the town of Basin, which was Loosedale, it was a city, or the town of the city, with one red light. That was it. So there was, all we were used to was just the community we lived in with that group of people, and the group of people that we saw when we went to town moving on the street. If we went to town, we stopped at that one red light, that one stop sign, that one place. And everything was on Main Street. So you commanded your community, you knew your community, you knew who lived in the community, you knew what the community was like. And as I shared with you about how we communicated before telephones, and how my mama could get my brother to come from a 6-mile radius in about 45 minutes because she would call to a cousin's house out loud and said, somebody tell Dyke he needs to come home. Somebody over the holler heard that Orme was calling for Dyke, and they sent the message on, and the message finally got to about 6 miles away, and somebody said, boy, you better go home, your mama looking for you. So that was the communication as far as getting one person to another. So after I finished college and arrived in Memphis, I was looking for Loosedale. I looked for Loosedale. You know, I got here and they had, 200 traffic lights. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? And I told you about the day that I was here all but a week, and it was raining cats and dogs. It was raining. And I had taken all the traffic tests when I got my driver's license, but they were based on Loosedale. So you didn't have to worry about, you just stopped at that traffic light and you left, and the person that gave you the test said, great job, and you parked parallel, and it was over. Well, I'm in Memphis, and there I didn't have the Memphis test. And it was raining, 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 raining. And I was at Parkway and Lamar. And I had to turn to go left, to go right in where I was going. And every time I would get ready to turn, it would be too many cars coming this way. So I couldn't turn. Every time I get ready to turn, cars would take off, and it would be cars just coming, coming, coming. 5 minutes I sat, 10 minutes I sat, 15 minutes I sat, and I kind of looked behind me, and there were 200 cars behind me needing to turn. And I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? I was just frustrated, and I didn't know what to do. So finally a man came, and he knocked on my window. And he said, roll down your window. He said, when the light turned green again, look for the arrow and go. I said, oh, okay. So I looked for the arrow, And I saw the arrow, and I left, and I went home. That was my introduction to traffic in Memphis. But it was also my introduction to how large the city was, what it looked like. And I remember standing on the corner of Madison and 2nd thinking, do I know anybody in this city? Do I know anybody's name? Do anybody know my name in this city? How do I get to know people? And to give you a little background, I came from college here to help to start a Sunday school for my church. So I was here to do a job, all of 20 years old, and just did not know, just couldn't get my bearings to this huge city. So I was standing on that corner that day, and I stood there about 30 minutes, and I just looked around, all around in this city, and I thought, how do you get to know people? Where are the Lawrences? Where are the Marshalls? Where are the people I know in this city? Where are these people? What do I do to get to know these people? And I stood there for about 30 minutes and then went on about my way, thinking about how I was going to command this city and how I was going to get to know people and how I could do my job and what was going to happen. So after about 6 weeks of failing at getting people to come to Sunday school and getting people to do things, I began to look at what it was. I said, if it's going to be a community for me, I'm going to have to make that community. And I remember the day I said that. I will have to make that community. It would be a community that I will have to make. Had no idea at that time how I was going to make a community and get to know people in Memphis that would be a part of my life and they would be a part of my daily moving. But I said, if it will happen, it will be something I will have to do. I will have to make it happen. So after my husband and I were married, I got the Sunday school together. 45 people became part of Sunday school. They got a pastor, and they went on about their business, and I got married. So my husband and I started going to church. And we had the church community, which I felt just as lost as I was in Loosedale, but I was beginning to figure this out. Then I met a man with one leg named George Bass. And George Bass was a man that brought children to church at his church. But he brought them just as they were, unbathed, unkept, whatever, however they got up on that Sunday morning, he brought them to church the way they were. And sometimes he'd make 2 trips, sometimes he'd make 3 trips, and he'd have 25 children in church on Sunday morning, and the church was just lit up. And, you know, not with light, but you understand what I'm saying. So it was a problem. It was a problem in the church. So the deacons met, and they said, you can't do this anymore unless you get them ready for church. So I'm always drawn, I was always drawn and still am drawn to elderly people. Now I'm one of them, so I don't know how I'm drawn anymore, because I'm one of the ones I'm drawn to. So he said to me, he called me little girl because I was young. He said, little girl, I need you to help me. Well, I didn't know what to do, but I said I will help. So in the process of helping him, he said, meet me at my apartment at Wells and Thomas. Well, after finding Wells and Thomas, I was just standing there with my mouth wide open and wondering why I was at Wells and Thomas. It was about 50 mothers and maybe a couple of couples living in there, and George Bass. And this was a low-income place. And when I say low, I want to say not underserved, I want to say low. It was terrible. And these people were doing the very best they can. It must have been pre-food stamps. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how they were living. But George Bass was helping these people. He was living in this squalor, so to speak. And he was helping these people in this community. And he asked me to start to help get these children ready for church. And I don't know how he felt like I could help him get these children ready for church. I was ill-equipped to help him because, number one, I was the baby in my family. I had never held the babies I remember. I was the baby, and I just didn't know much about children. And I didn't have a real feel for it. He said, but I need you to help. So I said, I will. So I picked up a little girl, one of the girls, just picked up one. So let me just try one. I picked up one on a Friday evening, and I took her to my house. And after about 5 hours, I had picked all the gum and the candy and whatever else was in her hair. And when she got there, I thought her hair was this long. After I got it all done, it was this long. And we took her back to church on Sunday morning, and people said, where'd you get this little girl? I said, she was here last Sunday. We don't remember seeing her. So methodically, we began to work with each one of these children. And I'm saying all that to say, I would love to tell you the whole long story of how these kids turned out, and a lot of them turned out really great. I would like to tell that story, but the whole story is that George Bass was the first person that I saw doing work in the community, in a place where people live. And I was fascinated with him. And I was fascinated at what I was learning from George Bass, because he not only was there to be the babysitter, to help with the food or be the transportation, he was the person that taught these children how to be young women and young men and to become what they would become. So out of that Wells and Thomas area, I still have relationships with girls and boys that was in there. So it was my first seeing this. But George, by then, had us hooked. And that's when I started not only bringing children to the home, there are a lot of other things played into this, but George was the basis of this. We not only just started bringing children into the home, we were bringing them on a part-time basis. Then we ended up with foster care. So that was my second intro with keeping children in the home, was my second intro of community-based work, was that having a child in the home and working with that child on a daily basis. It fared some better than what George Bass did, because now we were taking these girls and 1 or 2 boys into the home, and we were working with them every day. After 30 years and 75 girls, it turned out pretty well. So that was my second kind of intro into this, with learning that you can help a person, and being in the community where they live was highly important. It was highly important. Now, all of these things come with their challenges. All of them come with their group, with their challenges. Now, when we moved in to help the children and bring them home for Sunday dinner and to be involved with them on a part-time basis, we also still had hanging in the community their parents. Their parents were still there. So you could not just say, I'm helping a child. So you had to help a child and help the child's parent, and we couldn't bring both people into the home on a full-time basis. So in the process of taking kids to and from, not like George Bass making 2 or 3 different trips, some circumstances happened, and we said we have to have bigger transportation. So we bought a motorhome. And that was my third intro to community service and being in the community where a person lived.